My name is Morgan Reynolds, and at 33, I watched my career as marketing director at Reynolds Innovations crumble in a single afternoon. After 8 years of dedication and countless 60-hour weeks, I was betrayed by the three people I trusted most: my younger sister Emily, my mentor and boss Richard, and Allison, the woman I considered my best friend. They orchestrated my humiliating termination, smirking as security escorted me out of the building. What they didn't know? I secretly owned 67% of the entire company they worked for. If you've ever been blindsided by betrayal, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe. This story might give you the closure you're looking for. I grew up in Portland in a solidly middle-class family where education and achievement were emphasized above all else. My parents weren't wealthy, but they invested everything they had in ensuring my sister Emily and I could achieve the success. They never did. Emily was 6 years younger than me, and from an early age, I sensed her struggle living in what she perceived as my shadow. While I excelled in academics, winning spelling bees and math competitions, Emily sought attention through dance recitals and art shows that my parents dutifully attended but never quite understood how to praise properly. They'd ask, "Why can't you focus on practical subjects like your sister?" Without realizing it, they planted seeds of resentment that would grow silently over decades. My academic achievements continued through high school and into college, where I earned a full business school scholarship while working part-time to cover living expenses. The scholarship led to prestigious internships that padded my resume, further widening the perceived gap between Emily and me. While my parents celebrated my accomplishments, my grandfather Robert became my true mentor. Unlike my achievement-focused parents, Grandpa Robert taught me about the subtle art of business strategy, ethics in leadership, and most importantly, the power of patient investing. "Money can buy power, Morgan," he'd tell me during our Sunday chess games, "but integrity determines whether that power builds or destroys." What I didn't realize then was that Grandpa Robert wasn't just sharing wisdom, he was grooming his successor. When he passed away 5 years ago, I was shocked to discover he'd left me not only his substantial fortune, but also controlling shares in Reynolds Innovations, a mid-sized marketing technology company he'd quietly invested in decades earlier. The company had no idea that the elderly man who occasionally toured their facilities as a curious investor had accumulated 67% ownership over 30 years. With his dying wish, he asked me to learn the business from the inside, before revealing myself as owner. "See how they operate when they don't know who's watching," he advised in a final letter. "You'll learn more truth that way than from any quarterly report." Following his wisdom, I set up a blind trust with Jordan Chen, my grandfather's longtime attorney, to manage my ownership secretly. Despite my MBA and experience that could have landed me a senior position, I applied for an entry-level marketing coordinator role at Reynolds Innovations, using my credentials but letting them assume I was unrelated to the company founder who shared my last name. I wanted to understand the company's operations from the ground up, to feel its culture as an employee rather than an owner. During orientation week, I met Allison Parker, a marketing specialist who took me under her wing. With her quick wit and seemingly genuine interest in mentoring newcomers, we developed a friendship that extended beyond office hours to weekly dinners where we'd dissect workplace politics and share personal stories. Within months, she became my closest confidant, the person I trusted with dreams, fears, and family struggles. When I eventually earned a promotion to marketing manager, Allison celebrated with me, never showing signs of the jealousy or competitiveness that often poisoned workplace friendships. Richard Blackwood, the marketing director and my immediate supervisor, became another trusted figure in my professional life. During our regular feedback sessions, he praised my strategic thinking while providing constructive criticism that genuinely improved my work. When I expressed interest in eventually moving into leadership, he created opportunities for me to lead projects and gain visibility with executives. His mentorship seemed so authentic that I began to see him as the supportive, professional father figure I'd always craved. 2 years into my time at Reynolds, Emily graduated college with a communications degree but struggled to find employment in Portland's competitive market. Seeing her frustration and wanting to repair our increasingly strained relationship, I suggested she apply for an open social media coordinator position at Reynolds. I spoke to Richard, highlighting her relevant skills while being careful not to oversell her abilities. When Emily got the job, her initial gratitude was palpable, but I noticed an underlying current of resentment that she needed my help at all. Still, I hoped working together would heal our relationship as she established her own identity at the company. Over the next 3 years, my contributions to Reynolds became significant as I developed award-winning marketing campaigns that increased revenue by 32%. My innovative approaches to digital marketing earned industry recognition, and internally, I built strong relationships across departments. I kept my ownership secret, wanting advancement based on merit rather than inheritance. Yet as my star rose, I began noticing subtle changes. Emily's increasing coolness toward me in the break room, Allison's sudden cancellations of our standing dinner dates, and Richard's growing tendency to have closed-door meetings immediately after our one-on-ones. Looking back, these were the first warning signs I chose to ignore. The annual company retreat at Mount Hood should have been a relaxing break from office politics, but instead, it marked the beginning of the end. While I led team-building activities that I'd spent weeks preparing, I couldn't help noticing Emily, captivating Richard and other executives during evening socials with stories that painted her as the creative force behind projects we both knew were primarily mine. She had mastered the art of saying "we" when describing successes and subtly distancing herself from any initiatives that hadn't performed well. Even more concerning, Allison had suddenly become Emily's unofficial mentor, the role she had once played for me. I would round a corner to find them huddled together, conversations abruptly shifting when I approached. Lunches and coffee breaks that had once included me now happened without invitations, and when I asked about joining, there were always vague excuses about just catching up on personal stuff. Upon returning from the retreat, a major opportunity arose when our biggest client requested a complete brand refresh with an expanded budget. This was exactly the kind of high-visibility project that could cement my candidacy for the director position that was opening up with the current director's retirement. I poured myself into developing an innovative pitch that incorporated emerging technologies while honoring the client's established market presence. When I presented my concept to the team, including Richard and several senior managers, the response was enthusiastic, with specific elements of my strategy drawing appreciative nods and questions about implementation timelines. Richard scheduled a follow-up meeting for final approval, but mysteriously, the meeting was rescheduled twice without my knowledge. When I returned from lunch on the third rescheduled date, I discovered the meeting had not only occurred without me, but that major decisions had been finalized in my absence. Worse still, Emily had been assigned to lead the implementation of my campaign concept, with Allison providing senior guidance. When I questioned Richard about being excluded, his response was dismissive. "We needed to move quickly, and you weren't at your desk." Emily stepped up with some excellent refinements to your initial concept. Despite the obvious slight, I attempted to support the project, offering Emily assistance based on my deeper understanding of the strategy. Her response cut deeply. "I think I've got this handled, Morgan. Maybe focus on your own projects instead of trying to micromanage mine?" This marked a distinct shift in office dynamics. Colleagues who had previously sought my input began directing questions to Emily or Allison instead. I found myself excluded from email chains regarding campaigns I had initiated, and meeting invitations became increasingly rare. My growing anxiety prompted me to check company records after hours, discovering altered meeting minutes that minimized or completely removed my contributions from the official record. When I confronted Allison about these changes, her response was a masterclass in gaslighting. "Are you sure you're remembering correctly? You've seemed pretty stressed lately. Maybe you're confusing what you suggested with what was actually decided." One evening, working late to catch up on the projects that still remained my responsibility, I overheard Richard in the conference room speaking to board members. Through the partially open door, I heard him praising Emily's fresh perspective and natural leadership qualities, while subtly implying that my recent work showed signs of creative stagnation and resistance to collaboration. My suspicions grew further when I accidentally encountered Richard, Allison, and Emily at a coffee shop 20 miles from our usual neighborhoods on a Sunday morning. They clearly hadn't expected to see me there, and their explanation about happening to run into each other rang hollow given the distance from our usual haunts. As my isolation intensified, physical symptoms of stress manifested. Insomnia that left me staring at my ceiling until 4 a.m, anxiety attacks in bathroom stalls between meetings, and a growing sense of self-doubt that made me question whether I was imagining the conspiracy forming around me. My annual performance review with Richard, previously a source of validation and constructive feedback, suddenly featured criticism about my difficulty adapting to team dynamics and resistance to mentoring junior staff, despite no previous mentions of such issues. When the HR department requested unusual documentation of all my projects from the past year, with detailed breakdowns of my specific contributions versus team input, the timing felt suspicious rather than routine. Concerned that my position was being systematically undermined, I called Jordan to express my growing unease. His advice was measured but affirming. Document everything, forward relevant emails to your personal account, and keep notes of all conversations. If they're building a case against you, we need to be prepared. But remember, you have options they don't know about. I chose not to reveal my ownership yet, hoping the situation would resolve naturally and wanting to believe I might be overreacting to normal workplace competition. The quarterly results meeting became the stage for the most blatant betrayal yet. As department heads gathered in the main conference room, I watched in disbelief as Emily took the podium to present the marketing strategy for our next product, launch. Slide by slide, she unveiled what was essentially my strategy, developed over months of market research and competitive analysis, with only superficial modifications to the color scheme and terminology. The work I had shared with Richard, in confidence during our mentorship sessions, was now being presented as Emily's brainchild. Beside me, Allison nodded enthusiastically at each point, occasionally making comments like, "Emily's approach here is brilliantly innovative," or, "This represents a fresh direction for the department." Across the table, Richard beamed with pride, as if witnessing the emergence of a marketing prodigy he had personally discovered. The final blow came when Richard stood to announce organizational changes. Given the remarkable vision Emily has demonstrated, I'm pleased to announce her promotion to team leader for our upcoming projects. The room applauded while I sat frozen, humiliation burning through me as colleagues stole glances to gauge my reaction. I maintained a professional facade through the remainder of the meeting, but the moment it concluded, I followed Emily to the parking garage, determined to confront her away from prying eyes. "That was my strategy," I said, keeping my voice level despite the rage and hurt threatening to overwhelm me. "Every key point, every approach, even the phased implementation timeline. How could you present my work as your own?" Emily's response wasn't denial but a furious eruption of long-suppressed resentment. "Do you have any idea what it's like living in your shadow all these years? Morgan got straight A's again. Morgan earned another scholarship. Why can't you be more focused? Like your sister? Every achievement of mine was measured against yours and found wanting." When I reminded her how I'd helped her secure her position at Reynolds, her laugh was bitter and cutting. "Your help? You think I needed your help? Or wanted it? You recommended me because it made you look good," the benevolent big sister extending a hand to her struggling sibling. "Did you ever consider I might want to succeed somewhere your name wasn't already written all over everything?" The argument escalated until Emily delivered the blow that confirmed my worst fears. "Richard and Allison see what you can't, Morgan. They recognize when someone's past their prime, too comfortable in their position to innovate anymore. At least they value what I bring to the table. That night, unable to sleep, I accessed my work email remotely and discovered an extensive chain of correspondence between Richard, Allison, and Emily, discussing my problematic attitude and resistance to change. The earliest messages dated back 6 months, suggesting a coordinated effort that began long before any performance issues were mentioned to me. Digging deeper into shared drives, I found presentation drafts with my name methodically removed from contributor lists, revision histories altered to minimize my input, and strategy documents recategorized to appear as collaborative efforts, rather than my individual work. The orchestrated nature of the campaign against me became increasingly apparent as colleagues began avoiding eye contact in hallways and conversations would abruptly cease when I entered the break room. Rumors clearly circulated beyond my earshot, creating an atmosphere of awkward tension that isolated me further. The situation escalated when HR called me in regarding an anonymous complaint about my hostile behavior toward Emily and attempts to undermine team cohesion. The interview was less an investigation than an indictment, with leading questions clearly designed to extract responses that would fit a predetermined narrative about my supposedly deteriorating performance and interpersonal skills. The interviewer's questions revealed the extent of the machinations. Several witnesses have noted your visible displeasure when Emily receives recognition. How would you characterize your reaction to her recent promotion? Or, we understand. There was a confrontation in the parking garage where you accused Emily of stealing your ideas. Would you like to explain that incident? Each question was framed to make any defense sound like denial or deflection. That evening, I called Jordan for an emergency consultation, finally sharing the full extent of the situation. They're systematically erasing my contributions and building a case for termination, I explained, forwarding the evidence I'd gathered. Jordan's expression grew grave as he reviewed the documents. This is more coordinated than typical workplace politics, Morgan. They're laying groundwork for something significant. We should consider whether it's time to reveal your ownership position. Despite his advice, I hesitated. My emotional investment in earning my position through merit rather than inheritance remained strong, and I naively believed that Richard would recognize the value I brought to the company he supposedly cared about. Let's wait, I decided. I want to see exactly how far they're willing to go before I show my hand. Jordan reluctantly agreed, but prepared the necessary documentation to assert my controlling interest when the moment arrived. Just say the word, he assured me, and the entire power dynamic changes. As days passed, I continued performing my duties with professional excellence despite the increasingly hostile environment. My commitment to the company's mission and the employees who weren't involved in the conspiracy against me outweighed my personal grievances. I still believed in the products we created and the value we provided customers, refusing to let the betrayal contaminate my work ethic. Looking back, I wonder if that dedication made me an easier target, predictably continuing to contribute while they dismantled my position piece by piece. The morning the email arrived marked the culmination of months of calculated betrayal. Subject line: Urgent discussion with HR and leadership. 2 Unchatcher PM today. Boardroom. The ominous formality and lack of context signaled this wasn't a routine meeting. Despite the knot in my stomach, I spent the morning meticulously organizing documentation of my contributions, printed emails proving my authorship of disputed projects, and performance metrics demonstrating my continued value to the company. If this was to be the confrontation I anticipated, I would not enter unprepared. At precisely 2 o'clock, I walked into the boardroom to find a tableau staged for maximum intimidation. Richard at the head of the table, flanked by Allison and our HR director, Patricia, with Emily seated slightly apart but still clearly aligned with them. 2 executive vice presidents I rarely interacted with occupied the far end, their presence lending artificial gravitas to the proceedings. The empty chair positioned alone on the opposite side of the table might as well have been labeled accused. Richard's expression was a practiced mask of somber regret as he began. Morgan, thank you for joining us. This is an unfortunate but necessary conversation about patterns of behavior that have become impossible to ignore. What followed was a meticulously choreographed character assassination. Patricia opened a folder containing supposedly documented incidents, beginning with fabricated emails where selective sentences were highlighted out of context to suggest hostility. Screenshots of projects allegedly sabotaged through my interventions were presented with timestamps that had clearly been altered. Most disturbing were the testimonials from anonymous colleagues describing my increasingly erratic behavior and intimidation tactics toward Emily. Allison's performance was particularly convincing, her voice cracking with apparent emotion, as she described how difficult this was for her as my friend. Over recent months, I've noticed alarming changes in Morgan's professional conduct. She's become territorial about projects, dismissive of collaborative input, and increasingly resentful of Emily's contributions. As her friend, I tried addressing these concerns privately, but the situation has only deteriorated. Emily completed the triumvirate of betrayal with a tearful account of feeling targeted and sabotaged by my supposed jealousy. I've tried so hard to maintain our relationship both as sisters and colleagues, she claimed, dabbing at non-existent tears. But Morgan seems unable to accept my growing role in the company. Last week in the parking garage, she accused me of stealing her ideas and threatened that I would regret it. Each time I attempted to defend myself or present my own documentation, Richard smoothly interrupted, "We'll get to your perspective in a moment, Morgan." Or, "Let's complete the overview before addressing specific points." My evidence was dismissed as irrelevant to the established pattern, or prepared after the fact to create an alternative narrative. After 45 minutes of this orchestrated ambush, Patricia delivered the rehearsed conclusion. At Reynolds Innovations, we pride ourselves on maintaining a collaborative culture built on mutual respect and integrity. When an employee's conduct repeatedly undermines these values, we have a responsibility to the entire organization to take appropriate action. Richard nodded gravely before delivering the final judgment. Effective immediately, your employment with Reynolds Innovations is terminated. We've prepared the necessary paperwork, and security will escort you to collect any personal items from your desk. As if on cue, a security guard appeared at the doorway, holding a cardboard box containing items haphazardly swept from my desk drawer. My family photo lay face down, the frame cracked from careless handling. My carefully prepared evidence remained untouched on the table, as I was essentially prevented from presenting my defense. The situation's choreographed nature became even more apparent as we exited the boardroom to find the normally busy marketing department suspiciously quiet, as if everyone had been warned to be at their desks for this precise moment. Eyes followed my progress through the open office area, some colleagues looking away in embarrassment while others watched with undisguised curiosity. As we passed her desk, Allison leaned close to whisper, "This is just business, Morgan. You should have played the game better." Emily kept her gaze averted, but I caught the momentary smirk that flashed across her face when she thought no one was watching. The security guard, clearly uncomfortable with his assignment, apologized quietly as we waited for the elevator. "Just doing my job, nothing personal." The box in my arms contained 8 years of professional life reduced to a few mementos. A coffee mug from our product launch in Austin, a congratulatory card signed by the team after our industry award win, and the shattered picture frame that once displayed my proudest moment at the company. The walk through the lobby felt endless, former colleagues staring or deliberately avoiding eye contact as the ultimate workplace humiliation played out. Through the glass doors, I glimpsed Richard already in animated conversation with Allison and Emily, their concerned expressions from moments ago replaced with satisfied smiles. Outside in the parking lot, my security badge deactivated with a Final beep. A technological exclamation point to my unceremonious dismissal. Sitting in my car, I finally allowed the tears that had been threatening all afternoon. A brief moment of mourning for relationships I had believed genuine, and a career path I had earned through dedicated work. The moment of weakness lasted exactly 3 minutes before determination replaced despair. With steady hands, I reached for my phone and called Jordan. "It's time," I said without preamble. "I want to show Richard, Allison, and my sister exactly who really owns Reynolds Innovations." The first days after my firing unfolded in a blur of conflicting emotions. My apartment became a reflection of my mental state. Takeout containers piled beside my laptop, unwashed coffee mugs collecting on the coffee table, and blinds perpetually drawn against the spring sunshine that seemed to mock my situation. I cycled through grief, rage, and betrayal in endless loops, reliving the boardroom ambush and parsing every interaction leading up to it for clues I should have recognized sooner. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by dreams where I was perpetually walking down the office corridor while colleagues turned away one by one. Jordan visited on the third day, arriving with a portfolio of company documents and a concerned expression that suggested I looked worse than I realized. "You need to shower, Morgan," he said bluntly, opening windows to dispel the stale air. "Revenge is a business best conducted with a clear head." As I made myself presentable, Jordan spread financial records across my dining table, highlighting discrepancies that had escaped my attention during my employment. Richard had apparently been planning to sell the company's research division, which our internal metrics painted as underperforming. But Jordan's independent analysis revealed was actually our most profitable sector considering long-term contracts and intellectual property value. Allison had been systematically manipulating marketing performance reports to justify a department restructuring that would eliminate positions held by Richard's critics while expanding her own team's budget and authority. Most disturbing was Emily's new proposal, already circulating among leadership, to redirect substantial resources to an external vendor for a platform rebuild that our in-house team could handle more efficiently. Jordan's research revealed the vendor was owned by Allison's college roommate, suggesting kickbacks that would have gone unnoticed without our heightened scrutiny. "They're not just pushing you out," Jordan concluded. "They're positioning to extract maximum personal benefit while potentially damaging the company's long-term stability." While building our case against the triumvirate occupied my daylight hours, evenings became dedicated to personal recovery. Recognizing the toll the betrayal had taken on my mental health, I began therapy sessions with Dr. Merritt, a specialist in workplace trauma. "What you're experiencing is a legitimate grief response," she explained during our first session. "You've lost not just employment but relationships you valued and an identity connected to your role. Acknowledge that grief before moving into action." Following her guidance, I developed a structured routine to rebuild my sense of control. Morning runs along the riverside to release pent-up anger, journaling sessions to process emotions without judgment, and meditation practices to center myself, before strategy meetings with Jordan. The isolation that initially felt crushing gradually became selective solitude as I recognized which relationships deserved my continued investment. Zoe Crawford, my college roommate who had moved to Seattle years earlier, became my lifeline during this period. Unlike workplace friendships complicated by professional dynamics, our connection contained no ulterior motives. During our weekend visit, I finally shared the full story, including my secret ownership that I'd never revealed even to her. "Holy shit, Morgan," she breathed, wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. "You're basically Bruce Wayne." Her straightforward perspective cut through my emotional confusion. "They betrayed you because they underestimated you. They assumed your power came from your position, not recognizing the strength that exists independent of any title. Now you get to show them who you really are." Zoe's unwavering support and outside perspective helped clarify my thinking beyond the immediate desire for retribution. The best revenge isn't destroying them, she pointed out. It's building something better than they could imagine while ensuring they face consequences for their actions. Her words resonated with my grandfather's teachings about responsible leadership, shifting my focus from personal vindication to corporate responsibility. The company employed over 200 people whose livelihoods depended on its continued success, regardless of the leadership failures at the top. Working with Jordan and financial advisor Tamara Kingsley, I developed a comprehensive improvement plan focusing on innovation and employee well-being rather than the cost-cutting measures Richard had increasingly favored. Our audit revealed his leadership had created a culture of fear that stifled creativity while rewarding those who aligned with his personal agenda rather than those who produced the best results. Companies reflect their leadership, Tamara noted during one planning session. The cultural problems started at the top and filtered down. Changing figureheads without addressing the underlying issues would just perpetuate the cycle with different faces. As the strategy took shape, I immersed myself in research on healthy corporate cultures, employee retention, and satisfaction metrics that could transform Reynolds Innovations beyond simple profitability. Each evening, I practiced delivering key points of our presentation, anticipating objections and preparing responses that would redirect focus to the company's welfare rather than personal grievances. The night before the scheduled board meeting, I visited my favorite boutique to select the perfect outfit for the confrontation, something that communicated authority without aggression. The navy blue suit and subtle gold accessories represented my transformation from victim to leader, an external reflection of the internal shift these weeks of preparation had created. For the first time since my termination, I slept peacefully through the night, waking refreshed with absolute clarity about the day ahead. My morning ritual became a sequence of empowerment, brewing the special reserve coffee I saved for significant occasions, reviewing my grandfather's letters about integrity and business, and finally, placing his worn chess piece, a queen carved from rosewood, into my jacket pocket as a tangible reminder of his presence. As I applied the finishing touches to my appearance, my phone chimed with a text message from Emily. "Hope you're doing okay. We should talk sometime." The transparent insincerity after weeks of silence confirmed I was making the right decision. Without responding, I focused on final preparations for the board meeting. Jordan arrived precisely at 8:30, accompanied by 2 associates carrying leather portfolios containing our meticulously prepared documentation. "The board members have been notified of an emergency session," he confirmed. "Richard has been informed it concerns quarterly projections requiring immediate attention, so all key players will be present." During the drive to corporate headquarters, nervous anticipation gave way to absolute certainty. The company I had helped build, that my grandfather had entrusted to me, deserved better than leaders who prioritized personal gain over collective success. Whatever personal satisfaction might come from today's revelation was secondary to restoring integrity to Reynolds Innovations. As we pulled into the executive parking area, I touched the chess piece in my pocket one final time. "Let's go show them who really owns the board," I said to Jordan, stepping out of the car with the confidence that comes from knowing you hold the truth in your hands. The security guard at the executive entrance did a double take as I approached, confusion evident as he recognized the recently terminated employee now walking purposefully toward him with a legal team in tow. "Ms. Reynolds, I was told you know." "Longer," he began uncertainly, hand moving instinctively toward his radio. Jordan stepped forward smoothly, presenting a folder of legal documents. "Ms. Reynolds is attending the board meeting as majority shareholder of Reynolds Innovations. Here is the documentation confirming her ownership and right to enter these premises." The guard's expression shifted from confusion to shock as he verified the paperwork, then wordlessly stepped aside with an apologetic nod. The executive floor. Receptionist nearly dropped her phone upon recognizing me, immediately placing an urgent call that I presumed was to Richard's office. "They're already in the boardroom," she stammered. "But I don't think, that is, I wasn't informed." "Jordan, placed a reassuring hand on her desk. "No need to announce us. This is a scheduled appearance." The boardroom doors were closed, but through the frosted glass, I could see silhouettes gathered around the table. Taking a deep breath, I savored the final moment before everything would change, then pushed the doors open with deliberate calm. Inside, the scene was exactly as Jordan's intelligence had suggested. Richard standing at the presentation screen displaying graphs of the proposed restructuring, board members arranged around the mahogany table with varying expressions of engagement, Allison taking notes with the satisfied expression of someone whose plans were unfolding perfectly, and Emily seated near the leadership section, nervously fidgeting with her pen as she attempted to project confidence she clearly didn't feel. Conversations halted mid-sentence as heads turned toward our unexpected entrance. Richard recovered first, his expression shifting from surprise to controlled irritation. "Morgan, this is a closed board meeting. Security will escort you out immediately." He reached for the desk phone, but Jordan smoothly intercepted, placing his hand over the receiver. "That won't be necessary, Mr. Blackwood. Ms. Reynolds is here in her capacity as majority shareholder." The phrase hung in the air like a thunderclap, board members exchanging confused glances as Richard's face contorted with disbelief. What ridiculous claim is this? If this is some desperate attempt to disrupt company business after your termination. Jordan methodically distributed folders to each board member. These documents confirm that Morgan Reynolds holds 67% of Reynolds Innovations through a blind trust established by her grandfather, Robert Reynolds, the original angel investor in this company. She has chosen to reveal her position today in light of concerning business practices that threaten the company's stability. The color drained from Richard's face as he frantically flipped through the documentation, searching for any loophole or misrepresentation. Finding none, he attempted to regain control of the rapidly deteriorating situation. "This meeting is adjourned until legal can verify these claims. Everyone please exit while we sort through this." Misunderstanding. Board Chair Sandra Mitchell, a steel-haired veteran of corporate governance who had remained silent until now, firmly closed her folder. "I believe we should hear Ms. Reynolds out, Richard. These documents appear entirely legitimate, and if she indeed holds controlling interest, this discussion falls precisely within her purview." Richard's expression hardened as he realized his authority was evaporating. "This is a vindictive stunt. Following a justified termination for performance issues, Ms. Reynolds has demonstrated exactly the unstable behavior pattern that necessitated her removal." Rather than engaging with his accusations, I moved calmly to the presenter's position, connecting my laptop to the display system. "I appreciate your concern for the company, Richard. Let's examine the performance issues in detail, shall we?" The screen changed to display the first of our meticulously prepared slides, a financial analysis comparing reported marketing performance metrics with actual results extracted from raw data. These discrepancies between reported figures and actual performance warrant explanation. I continued professionally, advancing through evidence without emotional accusations. Similarly concerning are these communication records indicating coordinated efforts to remove key contributors through manufactured performance issues. Email screenshots appeared on screen, including messages between Richard, Allison, and Emily, discussing their strategy to undermine my position through gradual isolation and altered documentation. Allison attempted intervention, rising with practiced indignation. These are private communications taken out of context. Morgan clearly obtained these improperly after her termination. Jordan smoothly countered, "As majority shareholder, Ms. Reynolds has legal right to review any company communications relevant to operational concerns. Furthermore, these were obtained through authorized access using her ownership credentials, not her former employee access." Board members leaned forward with increasing interest as the presentation continued, revealing the systematic manipulation that had occurred not just against me, but throughout company operations. When confronted with evidence of the planned division sale that would have stripped valuable intellectual property from the company, Richard's composure finally cracked. "The research division is a financial drain. Any competent business person would recognize the necessity of cutting our losses. His defense only opened the door to more damning evidence as I presented the actual profitability figures his reports had obscured. Emily, sensing the shifting dynamics, attempted to distance herself from the unfolding disaster. I was only following directions, she interjected, voice quavering. Richard and Allison told me this was standard corporate strategy. I had no idea they were manipulating numbers or targeting Morgan unfairly. Her immediate betrayal of her former allies provoked a savage response from Richard. You were eager enough to take her position. Don't pretend innocence now that your ambition has consequences. The boardroom fell silent as his outburst revealed the character beneath the polished executive facade. Board members who had previously supported his initiatives now regarded him with visible concern, reevaluating past presentations in light of these revelations. Rather than dwelling on personal vindication, I transitioned to the final section of our presentation. A comprehensive business improvement plan addressing the structural and cultural issues that had allowed such manipulation to flourish. Reynolds. Innovations has extraordinary potential hampered by leadership practices that prioritize personal advancement over company welfare. These recommendations would establish transparency safeguards, ethical guidelines, and accountability measures to ensure such situations cannot recur. Sandra Mitchell, after consulting quietly with other board members, called for a vote on immediate leadership changes. In light of today's revelations, I move that we remove Richard Blackwood from his position effective immediately and appoint Morgan Reynolds as interim CEO while we conduct a thorough investigation into all matters presented. Today, the vote was unanimous, Richard's former supporters notably quick to distance themselves from his now toxic presence. As security arrived, this time to escort Richard and Allison from the building, the symmetry with my own humiliating departure wasn't lost on anyone present. Emily remained frozen in her seat, tears now genuine as she realized the magnitude of her miscalculation. When others had exited, she approached hesitantly. Morgan, I didn't know how far they were going. They convinced me you were trying to hold me back professionally, that you resented my success. I never wanted it to go this far. My response was measured, conscious of the watching board members. We'll discuss your future with the company privately, Emily. This isn't the appropriate setting. The board formally appointed me interim CEO with authority to implement immediate stabilizing measures, including freezing all pending organizational changes until proper review could be conducted. My first executive decision was to address all employees honestly about the situation, rather than allowing rumor and speculation to create further anxiety. The company-wide meeting that afternoon became an opportunity to set a new tone. Transparency about challenges without attacking individuals, commitment to meritocracy without favoritism, and recognition of the contributions of those who had been marginalized under previous leadership. Standing at the podium where Richard had once orchestrated my humiliation, I focused on the future rather than dwelling on past grievances. Today marks a reset for our corporate culture, not a revolution. The excellent work you've all contributed remains valuable, and the path forward will build on those strengths while addressing structural weaknesses that have hindered our collective potential. Employees exchanged glances of cautious optimism, whispers spreading through the auditorium as the dramatic reversal of fortune registered. By meeting's end, the nervous tension had largely dissipated, replaced by tentative hope visible in straightened postures and thoughtful questions about upcoming projects. Walking back to the executive offices that would now include mine, I caught fragments of conversations suggesting the company might emerge stronger from this upheaval. Finally, someone who actually understands the technical challenges. Maybe now the creative team will get the resources we've been requesting. Did you see how she focused on solutions rather than blame? Each comment confirmed what I had suspected all along. The damage caused by Richard's leadership extended far beyond my personal experience, affecting the entire organization in ways that would require time and consistent effort to repair. 3 months passed with remarkable swiftness as Reynolds Innovations underwent its transformation under my leadership. My grandfather's photo now occupied a prominent place on my desk in the corner office, his wise gaze a daily reminder of the responsibility accompanying ownership. The initial chaos following the leadership change had given way to encouraging stability. Quarterly results showing improved performance metrics, employee satisfaction scores rising steadily, and a renewed energy permeating hallways that had previously felt constrained by fear and politics. The independent investigation confirmed our initial findings while uncovering additional concerns requiring systematic address. Most gratifying was witnessing talented employees who had been marginalized under Richard's regime finally receiving recognition for their contributions. The most difficult conversation awaited me one Tuesday afternoon when I scheduled a private meeting with Emily in my office rather than the more intimidating boardroom. She entered hesitantly, the confident swagger of previous months replaced by genuine uncertainty about her future. "Am I being fired?" she asked immediately, remaining standing despite my gesture toward the visitor's chair. "Because I would understand if that's your decision." Setting aside the prepared talking points Jordan had suggested, I responded with the directness our relationship needed. "I've been struggling with that question since taking this position, Emily. On one hand, your actions contributed to significant harm, not just to me personally, but to the company culture. On the other, your family, and I believe you were manipulated by people with more experience and power." Emily finally sat, eyes fixed on her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I was jealous," she admitted quietly. "Everything always seemed to come so easily to you. And when Richard and Allison started suggesting you were holding me back, it validated feelings I'd had since childhood. But I never thought they'd take it as far as firing you." By the time I realized what was happening, I felt trapped in the narrative we'd created. Our conversation continued for nearly 2 hours, painful but necessary as we untangled the complex web of family dynamics, professional rivalry, and the toxic influence of Richard and Allison's manipulation. Rather than termination, I offered Emily a probationary position in product development, a department separate from marketing where her communication skills could be valuable, but where she would report to Thomas Chen, known for his mentorship abilities and ethical leadership. "This isn't forgiveness," I clarified as relief washed over her features. "It's an opportunity to rebuild trust through actions rather than words. Our personal relationship needs healing that can't happen if we're entangled professionally, which is why I'm placing you in a different department with clear boundaries between your work and mine." The investigation into Allison revealed a pattern more disturbing than we initially suspected. Similar manipulative behavior at 3 previous companies, leaving a trail of damaged careers and fractured teams before moving on to fresh opportunities where her reputation hadn't preceded her. Her attempt to position herself as an unwitting participant in Richard's schemes collapsed under documentation, showing she had often initiated the most underhanded tactics. Richard himself refused to exit gracefully, filing a lawsuit claiming wrongful termination and defamation that was quickly dismissed when our evidence was presented in preliminary hearings. His reputation in the industry suffered irreparable damage as former colleagues, freed from fear of retaliation, shared similar experiences of manipulation and credit theft throughout his career. The structural changes implemented at Reynolds, innovations focused on preventing future situations through transparency rather than punishment. Weekly open forums allowed employees to raise concerns directly to leadership. Anonymous reporting mechanisms provided safety for whistleblowers, and a comprehensive ethics policy established clear guidelines for advancement based on contribution, rather than politics. The mentorship program, ironically inspired by what Richard had pretended to provide, paired experienced leaders with promising talent through carefully structured relationships with regular oversight to prevent exploitation. My personal recovery progressed alongside the company's rehabilitation. Sessions with Dr. Merritt evolved from processing betrayal to exploring healthier relationship patterns. particularly recognizing warning signs I had ignored in my eagerness to believe in Richard and Allison's supposed support. The red flags were there, I acknowledged during one particularly insightful session. The exclusion from key meetings, the subtle undermining comments, the way conversations would stop when I entered rooms. I chose to dismiss those signals because confronting them meant accepting that people I trusted were actively working against me. This awareness shaped my approach to new relationships, particularly with Diana Martinez, the marketing director hired to rebuild the department after Allison's departure. Our friendship developed gradually, built on genuine respect and professional collaboration rather than the forced intimacy Allison had cultivated to gain my confidence. Most healing was a difficult dinner with my parents where I finally articulated the competitive dynamic they had unintentionally fostered between Emily and me. We both felt inadequate in different ways, I explained as they listened with growing comprehension. I felt pressured to maintain perfect achievement, while Emily believed her different strengths were inherently less valuable in your eyes. Their genuine distress at this revelation opened a path toward healthier family interactions, with monthly family meetings becoming a space for honest communication without the accumulated resentments of previous decades. Emily's journey toward redemption progressed in small, meaningful steps: therapy addressing her competitive issues, consistent performance in her new role without seeking shortcuts to advancement, and gradually rebuilding our sisterly relationship separate from professional contexts. During a rare shared lunch in the company cafe, she made an observation that suggested genuine growth. "I kept wanting what you had without understanding the work you put in to earn it. Taking your position didn't give me your knowledge or experience, just a title I hadn't grown into." The lessons learned through this painful chapter proved valuable beyond professional contexts, influencing how I approached all relationships. I became more attuned to inconsistencies between words and actions, setting clearer boundaries while remaining open to genuine connection. Most importantly, I found balance between compassion and the necessary protection of establishing consequences for harmful behavior. A year after the boardroom confrontation, I visited my grandfather's grave with flowers and a chess set, setting up the pieces on the small table beside his headstone, as we had done countless Sundays throughout my childhood. "The company is thriving, Grandpa," I said, opening with his favorite move. "Employee retention is up 70%, our latest product launch exceeded projections by 23%, and the toxic culture is gradually healing under more ethical leadership. You were right about learning the business from the inside before revealing my position. Without that experience, I might have become exactly the kind of disconnected owner who enables harmful management practices." Playing both sides of the chess game as we moved through opening strategies, I reflected on the philosophy that guided my leadership approach: integrity as non-negotiable, accountability applied equally regardless of position, and the understanding that organizational health depends on aligning individual ambitions with collective welfare. The best revenge wasn't owning the company, I concluded, advancing a pawn in what would have been his favorite counter-strategy. It was owning my worth and creating something better than what they tried to take from me. As shadows lengthened across the peaceful cemetery, I packed away the chess pieces with a sense of completion rather than closure. The story would continue, evolving, but the painful chapter had transformed into valuable wisdom rather than defining trauma. Have you ever experienced betrayal that eventually led to unexpected growth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes our most painful experiences become our greatest teachers, showing us strength we never knew we possessed. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that setbacks can become setups for something better. Thank you for listening to my journey. May your own challenges reveal the power that's been within you all along.